Welcome to Myanmar Musings, a podcast of the Myanmar Research Centre at the Australian National University, Canberra. I'm Luke Corbin. It's August 9, 2023, and today we are talking with Samuel Hmung, PhD student at the Coral Bell School of Asia Pacific Affairs at the Australian National University. Samuel has been at the ANU for some time, also doing his master's degree there, and in addition to his PhD, he's also currently involved in a joint research project on the Civil Disobedience Movement. Hello, Samuel.
Hi, Luke. Thanks for the opportunity.
It's great to have the chance to talk with you on these two topics. I guess we could start with the longer term one, starting with your thesis.
Yeah, sure.
I think your master's degree applied an original power sharing framework to explore and compare the preferences of Burmese political elites for power sharing, mostly looking through their public statements. So after that, how did you come to your PhD research? What are you trying to understand in your doctoral research?
For my thesis, I did a political science events for my master degree, and then at that times I was looking at the preference of the six actors, including NLD, UWSA, and KNU. And so those are three military as well. So three political parties, three armed groups. But looking at the power sharing preference between 2015 and 2020, and then I finished it in 2020 right before the coup, and I was planning to expand it, like looking at the more historical context, more analysis of their preference and the statements and their speeches, something like that. But the coup happened, so I was like, okay, my interest field changed a little bit to revolutions, like many other people. So I was like, okay, this is a very important moment in the country, and what would be the major contribution for the Myanmar literature or for the general public. So I was thinking like, okay, maybe I will focus more on the revolution literature. So I shift my focus completely. Now my PhD is about the revolutionary dynamic, and more specifically looking at the relationship of violence movement and non-violence movement. But I don't really want to say violence and non-violence. It's more like armed struggle and armed struggle groups movement in Burma. So we see that non-violence movement like Civil Disobedience Movement happening since early days of the coups. And there is also prolifications of armed groups happening in not like in the 1988 or not like in the 2007. So it is very significant phenomena happening in Burma. So I was looking at these two parallel spontaneous movement and learning about their relationship. And I am in my project, I am planning to expand it to do a little bit of comparative with the other country, similar cases like South Africa.
Great, that sounds terrific. And you're just starting out, right? This is your first year, so you should expect to be done by 2027 or something like that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So first year now. So I just finished my first semester.
Well, I look forward to coming back and talking more about that maybe in a year or so when you've started your data collection.
Yeah.
But moving on to the smaller research project that you're working on right now as well, which is obviously connected to your overall PhD research. So you are researching the Civil Disobedience Movement, and you also presented on this with your co-author Mike Dunford at the ANU Myanmar Update this year. And the video recording of that is available through the Myanmar Research Centre's website on the Zoom events platform. So the Civil Disobedience Movement, or CDM, as it is very commonly known, is, as you mentioned, now 2.5 years old. And it's changed considerably since it started in February 2021. And it started with a kind of furious energy, as we all remember. So the CDM can be approached from so many different angles. I don't even know where to begin. Could you please contextualize the CDM in your own words? What do you think of? What are you talking about when you say CDM? And then maybe give us an introduction to this research project?
Yeah. Briefly about this project is Mike and I've been working on this project as a policy paper first, and then as think less here, and then we uh, trying to expand it more and then make it the journal articles. But I've been closely following CDM and studying about it. I published some with a pseudonym or with the anonymous name before, and the CDM, the Civil Disobedience Movement in Burma, it has some unique characteristics. Something like it is generally mainly a public sector strike, which is one of the tactic of the civil resistance movement. But it started at second day of the coups. So by the hospital, public health worker in the hospital, medical institute, at COVID testing center, and it immediately is expand to the other part of the government offices like education and health and agriculture, municipals, and even the defense and home affairs, many police and military join. So in the Myanmar context, civil disobedience movement, it is mainly a public sector strike. But after a few days of the coup, so we see other civil resistance tactics also involved, like sit-in, like protests, street protests, labor strikes, and boycotts of the military and crony businesses, non-cooperation methods. So many things. So many tactics involved in the few days of the coup. So, but what the Myanmar people think as a CDM is that it is mainly a public sector strike. There is also groups and people, for example, like students, labor, they also claim as a CDM, or which is the participant of the CDM. They are not necessarily public sector people, but they don't involve or they don't engage with the military administrative body, or they don't use the military services. So they call them as a CDM, or the CDM student, CDM labor. So that is very interesting phenomenon.
Yeah, thanks. And so what are you seeking to understand? What is your research project about? What do we need to better understand about the CDM?
Yeah, one obvious gap about the CDM, the study of the CDM in Myanmar, is a very little attention are paid about the CDM movement. Yeah, that's understandable. After a few weeks after the coup, a few months after the coup, there's like conflicts happen, right? There's a proliferations of armed groups, PDF, defense forces, and also EU are engaged in the conflict. So many focus tend to this armed struggle, this violence movement. And then when we talk to the many people, even in the CDM or the policy body of the for example, like NUG or NUCC, many attention have been shifted to the conflicts. A lot of people are talking about it, and then that is where we think we can do something about the CDM. Okay, what is happening about the CDM now? How this movement evolve? What are the status goal of the CDM, or what are they thinking about this movement, the entire movement? Also about the armed resistance movement. So, and also what is happening with them now? What are their challenges? What are their frustration? What do they see about the whole what the end game or the end goal of this movement? So this is basically what we're trying to do in this project, and we talk to different individuals in outside of the civil servants and also the country, and also we talk to different groups supporting them, critics of the CDM, and then come up with what these people talking about the CDM, or how these people are struggling, or have a view about the whole movement. So this the plan of this project.
Okay, and you've mentioned one part of methodology there that you're doing many interviews. Is that your main methodology for this paper, interviewing CDM participants as well as people outside the CDM? Is that right? Or can you expand on your methodology a bit?
Yeah. So for this particular project, we talk more than 40 peoples in and out of the civil servant, also from inside outside country, and we talk about active civil servant for like more than 10 active civil servants currently working under the SAC, and also from at least 5 ministry, including education, health, home affairs, agriculture, defense, something like that. And so that is how we do. And then we also talk to people in the borderland area. So also from the India side, also in the Thailand side, and then we did a focus group discussion as well. So that is what we did in the past year, and then we are trying to expand it more for our journal paper. So that is our primary methods. For the secondary, we also use a lot of analyzing the public statements and the policy papers, and also we did a social media monitoring as well. So we got a lot of data from that too.
And do you have any preliminary findings or comments that you want to make about your data collection generation so far and your analysis? Anything that surprised you in this project about the CDM and its prospects?
Yeah, one of the main finding, which is also obvious one, is that since that is because of the military repression and the shifted attention toward the armed resistance movement, many CDM are like every CDM we talk in desperate need of livelihood, and they also lost a sense of purpose. For example, like what they should do for their life, or what they should they join should they join the SAC again, or should they remain in the non-CDM, something like that. So they are in the spring of livelihood. They have been struggling a lot, and many CDM are now doing job that is not they are expecting. Like some people are doing become a street vendor, some people are doing online selling, some people are in the construction site, something like that. So that is what we see. And then the second point is that there is a lot of division within the CDM itself. For example, like there is a division between high rank officer and the low rank officer, and there's also division between those remain in the country and who fled the country, and there is also a division between ethnic and linguistic different groups. And another important point is that the public administration body, what we call is in Burmese is Pitu Ocho Yepwe, we saw that they absorb a lot of CDMR and they utilize their skill in many part in building their alternative administration in their region. For example, there is a group in Chinsei. They have hundreds of CDMR working for them for their administration. Most of them are health worker and teacher. And also in the EAO, like TNL, the National Army. So they also have this mobile clinic, and they also have a training for the health worker and the other administrative body using those CDMR. And NUG is also doing the same thing. NUG last year they claim they are running 70 schools in Zagai and Magwe. Obviously, most of them are the CDMR teacher and who has experience working in the teaching environment. So this is what we found so far. And another last point is that we saw the soldier, those from the security sector, they join CDM for the different reason. For example, many CDM we interviewed said they feel pressure to join the CDM in the beginning of the period, beginning of the movement, because there's a lot of pressure from their peer, from their friends and family, and also there's a social punishment method that naming and shaming on social media who didn't enjoy the CDM movement, something like that. those people have a lot of pressure joining, but the soldier and police, they join for mostly for the moral reason. They think this is the wrong killing or torturing the protesters. So they try to defect, and then they join this kind of for moral reason.
It strikes me that this, and listening to you go through all of those cases, it makes me think just how difficult the CDM is to actually define. Does it stand in for all non-armed resistance to military rule in Myanmar, or is it a more particular set of non-violent resistance? You've got people, like you said, who quit their public sector jobs and now they're selling a jaw on the street or in a construction site and not getting any support from anybody, and maybe not even, publicly talking at all about anything that they're doing. But then you also have, you just mentioned, people who leave maybe the armed forces or leave the public sector and go to a third country, and they're actually administrated by the National Unity Government, and they're assigned a CDM code, and then they are given some financial support. You've got this very, very institutionalized definition of what the CDM is from these elite political actors in the resistance, like the NUG. But then you also have this very, very, very different one of just clerks who down their tools and do knitting on and sell clothes sort of online. So how do you reconcile this? Like, how do you actually, when you say CDM, like, how do you choose to define it within all of this space, or do you just keep it that wide? Is that all CDM, even if someone does not explicitly say, I support CDM with what they're doing, but they might be doing actions that you think is CDM? Could you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah. In literature, civil resistance mean like a tactic, right? A strategy of applying non-violence methods not to harm or threaten against their opponents. But in Myanmar, it's quite different. It might involve those that we can call threatening against their opponents, morally or physically. For example, social punishment is a big controversial, and the people we interview, even in the CDM, they said they don't support the social punishment because it could create a ascendant condition and it create more division, and it's gonna be really difficult for the post-revolutionary period when they start the state building process. So this is what we see, and the CDM is can say it started as a movement and it started as a strategy, a tactic, but now it's become like a identity. Identity is hard to say, but it become like an identity thing. So anyone that those involved in the CDM movement earlier, like in the beginning of the years, they don't engage with the military SAC or they quit their job. They call them as a CDM, but now some of them, like I said before, are now in the EAO administrative body or PDF administrative body. They still identify them as a CDM participant, CDM members. So it is hard to say they are not the CDM because of the definition in the literature or something like that. But this is what they said. That this is what they see themselves. So it is really hard of course, for the other people. Like if we support CDM, that could imply that you also support those people in the alternative body as well. Yeah, it's really difficult, but that is how people see themselves now.
And there's also CDM soldiers, as you've mentioned.
Yeah.
But some of these CDM soldiers actually go and engage in combat operations against the SITDAT. So that is actually armed resistance. It's another complication.
Yeah. That's why that's why we have a working definition. Me and Mike and I come up with. So we also present in the Myanmar update. So we call it CDM in Myanmar. So it's basically for Myanmar context, it's a non-violence mass movement that involve individuals who refuse to work or engage with the junta control administration of services with the shared goals of crippling its ability to rule the country. So we want to include those working in this, those claim themselves as a CDM student or labor as well, and also the individual who could be the civilian. So yeah, we try to include them. Yeah, not to have a very narrow or very broad definition.
And flipping it around a little bit, I mean, these research participants and people we're talking about are at huge risk, especially if they're inside Myanmar and they're still, using social media and being politically active.
Yeah.
They're at huge risk from the SAC and SAC administration and other civilians who support the SAC. So if we flip it around, does the SITDAT use the term CDM? What does the State Administration Council call this movement, these people? And maybe you can extend that also to, Pew Sortie and these kinds of civilian militia groups as well. Does the CDM even exist for what some would say is the state in Myanmar?
Yeah. From the SAC side, they try to not to use CDM as much as possible, but you can see in some of the military propaganda channels or groups, they call it, okay, these are the CDM, and then they always put something like a champa appointee, like the terrorist CDM. So they always try to label the CDM as a terrorist or the violence groups. So that is how they always label it. But that is how they always do it. And then they whatever there is a case, they will be charged against under the code 505 defamation. Defamation, which is the maximum 3 years in prison. So that is for the normal CDM people who just plead not to work under the military. But if they work with the NUG, or if they have a connection with the NUG, they could be charged with the anti-terrorism law, which with the maximum punishment is life in prison. So we saw that many people, like hundreds of health workers and civil servants, charged with 505, and a few charged with those the anti-terrorism law and under the SEC.
So the language that the administration uses is about terrorism. It's not necessarily equating CDM with any sort of political persuasion. It's just about terrorism.
Yeah.
Okay. It strikes me that the CDM could not have gotten this far, I would think, just on the basis of passion and the support from the existing entities that have rebelled against military rule, such as the many EAOs. All that support has been very important, but it wouldn't be enough. The CDM would need funding, right? So where is the money coming from? And you said it's not apportioned equally everywhere. What are the limitations, and what is the fiscal situation for the CDM?
Many groups, including NUG, CRPH, EO, they try as much as they can, but in the beginning of the movement, now mostly the funding sources dry out. That's why, like I said, they have been struggling with the livelihood now. I can give you some cases like CRPH in the earlier. In April, they formed a CRPH official funding program, CRPH OFP, that mainly based with the diaspora group in a different part of the country, in the part of the war. So they have a monthly contribution, weekly contribution to in the represented respective country, and send it back to the country, support the CDM. And the NUG also did in August 2021, they did a spring lottery, only with an aim to raise 20 billion kyat. At the time, it's approximately about 11 million USD, so to support the CDM alone. So according to their website, they said they support over 1,800,000 CDMer have been connected with the program, and they have supported them. But now the program stopped for some reason, and also there is also civil society initiative program like 1-to-1 CDM campaign or 1G campaign to support those. They raise a lot of millions of jet in donation, hundreds of millions of jet, and but those activity also stopped. So also many churches inside the country, many monastery, many religious or other organization and civil society. They also raise a lot of funding for their close network. And also CDM people themselves raise the money for themselves. They have they have a different priority to where to spend money. For example, like if they are pregnant, if they are disabled, the money goes to them first. If they have a struggling with the family and they have a health issue, they could be a second category, something like that. So they have this kind of strategy. But now is all dried off. The funding sources like dried up. So most of the funding sources now is coming from those alternative government, from the like EO bodies, the PDF body. Now those only working in those body got a few funding, but that's not the regular. We also see in our research that they are not regular. They only get some compensation like for the phone bill or for the one-time payment in the 3 months or 4 months, something like that. So like there is not much funding coming in for the CDM, and most of the funding are now go to armed resistance movement. Yeah.
So we're on a trajectory, Samuel. We don't know. I don't know where we're going, but the CDM is on a trajectory. You know, the SITDAT is on a trajectory. It's not sustainable. Many of the things that that the SAC is doing, and maybe arguably the same for the CDM. So, where do you think this ends up? What's the future for the CDM? Maybe the near-term future or the long-term one? And how did your research participants talk about this with you?
Yeah, good question. So when we asked about the goals of their stated goal about this movement, they said firstly they talk about to cripple the SAC administration. But now we have now the NUCC have a draft CDM policy. It stated about the stated goal of the CDM is to be part of the building federal democratic unions. To federal democratic state. So it's go beyond the post-revolutionary period. So also we need to know that there's many CDM are also involved in the NUG policy making as well. Like some of them become a minister of the NUG, deputy minister, or permanent secretary. A lot of them still working for them. So as a movement, we don't see much like new participant. Now then mostly news from the security sector, like soldier defecting, soldier and police, mainly from the conflict zones. So we don't see much coming from the civil servant. So what they are planning to do, or the NUG prioritizing, is that to have more CDM insider, like they call it PAD. So which is a new which is another tactic they use to label as consider them as a CDM. So as a movement is dry up. The movement have been decreased a lot, but a lot of people still have a determination that we should still work with the NUG. We should also focus more about the quality over quantity, meaning that we should more target about the high level CDM participation. if many of them are still working in the alternative government, even though so many people already left the movement or already go inside the SAC. They said it's fine. Yeah, they still have to. They're still working in this direction.
And maybe a last point there, just because you've mentioned it at the end, you talk about people maybe deciding to leak documents from within the ministries to the CDM or to anti-military forces, and then you also talk about CDMers returning to work in the military administration.
Mm-hmm.
What are the incentives there? Because I know that there are also active incentives. The SAC often publishes incentives asking people to return.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly when it comes to military soldiers, a lot of the CDM soldier support groups are also constantly doing the same thing, targeting soldiers. So what are the incentives there, people crossing over either way?
Yeah, so according to the CDM Success Committee, which is the policy making body part of the NUG, especially for the CDM, according to their data, there's have been about 350,000 CDM registered with them. But one of the RFA reports said that many people left, like maybe 40% already left the movement. So there's still like 200,000 participants. What military did is that in August 2021, they announced, military control media announced that if the CDM participants come back and if they return to work, if they don't break any law or if they didn't harm any personals, they can come back to work, and then they will accept it. They also give an example that about 3,000 teachers have been appointed after that announcement. So that is what the military did. And there's been many unreported cases that a health worker and a teacher, they went back to the SAC administration. And quietly, of course, they couldn't say, they couldn't make it public sided. They couldn't publicize it. So a lot of people already did. From the NUG side, from the CDM, from the NUG side, it's quite difficult to give an incentive because there's not much funding flowing for the CDM movement. All of them attention are giving to the armed resistance, so it's really difficult for them to give a incentive. But now their attention is shifted to high level ranking, for example, like the security defection. So they are giving more attention to the Bidu Jinquin, Bidu Seta, something like that. So this group are giving more attention and they have more resources now. And also the NUG, they recently have a pay-ed policy. And not recently, like in December 2022, they announced a pay-ed policy. So they make 4 important points. They recognize not only soldier and police, but also civilian public servants who cannot defect for various reasons. So various reasons, and they recognize them as a watermelon, like pay-ed. And if they want to involve in the program, they must send their personal information to the Ministry of Defense first, so they can be recognized and they can be registered, and they will be rewarded based on their quality of the information, and they will also get the protection from the NUG during the revolution and also in the post-revolution. And the final part, the soldier and police will also receive the benefit of the people embrace Bidu Jinquin program. So these are the 4 major points that the NUG make in the pay-ed policy. So there is that is a strategic shift from the NUG about the CDM participation.
Thank you, Samuel, for that really, really great overview of all kinds of different facets of the civil disobedience movement as it stands now in the middle of 2023, and we really look forward to reading that paper that you are co-authoring with Mike Dunford when it is done. To finish the episode, we always ask our guests to offer a recommendation, which can be about anything to do with Myanmar. It doesn't have to be academic. It could be, your favorite food or somewhere to visit or anything like that. So do you have a recommendation for our listeners to go out with?
I would recommend like yeah, foods are amazing, but I would recommend maybe read more Burmese news, learn more Burmese language, so you can be more engaged with what happening in the country, and you can be more understanding about what happening, yeah, with the people. So you will not only know about the culture, you will also know about the struggle of people. Like this generation, are amazing Gen Z. And many people also from the different generation are involving the revolutions. So if you can learn about the language, if you know, pay more attention about the country, I think I will be very, very grateful. Yeah, I think many people, millions of Burmese people will also be very grateful.
Well, that's great recommendation. And of course, for people outside of Myanmar, there are various people teaching at universities. You have Sayama Yuyu Kain at Cornell University and Sayama Yuri Takahashi at
Yeah, yeah,
Australian National University.
yeah,
Many others. Professor Justin Watkins is doing a 2-week intense Bamazaga Burmese language course in Chiang Mai in October, November this year. And of course, you can also take online lessons with many excellent Burmese teachers who are inside Myanmar.
exactly. Yeah, excellent information. Look,
Okay, well, let's wrap it up now, Samuel. And thanks so much for coming on Myanmar Musings. Really looking forward to your next appearance.
yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity. That is always good to share about this CDF movement and what happening with the people. I think that is very important. It's going to be very important. I think could be a very good, important contribution for the literature in the civil resistance and also in the Myanmar literature as well.